Welcome to the Chain Effect Podcast, where a physical therapist and a dietitian married with 2 kids juggle the struggle of running a business, raising a family, and prioritizing our own health, all while trying to have as much fun as possible.
We're your hosts, Taylor Pope, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and
Caroline Pope, registered dietitian.
Together, we own and operate a health facility, bringing together physical therapists, dietitians, personal trainers, and active recovery services to create what we call the Chain Effect. And Chain Effect is 10 years old.
Yes.
We just had a birthday.
10-year anniversary, and we had a party to celebrate, which was really fun.
Yeah, it was really fun to get to see our members and have our people commingle. We got it catered. It was awesome, but we did learn a lesson about catering, which is don't order the per person that you think you're going to get on the RSVPs.
Yeah, it's just so hard.
Yeah.
You don't want to under order. And I didn't want to over order because I hate wasting food. I was like, oh my gosh, I do not want to waste this food. However,
in my mind, I was like, I could eat Mediterranean food every day. Turns out after 6 meals in a row, you're like pretty
even
done
after
with it.
one meal.
Yeah.
But, you know, they always, just like any restaurant, they're always going to add more than a serving actually is. So we learned our lesson there, but it was really fun. And speaking of numbers, like our 10-year anniversary, today's episode is all about numbers to remember to improve your wellness.
Don't worry, there won't be much math. So if you're scared of math, don't be scared. We're going to talk about some numbers that hopefully will help people understand that there's more than just tracking calories and weight. And a lot of people worry about numbers that don't really matter, when these numbers may be more predictive of how long you're going to live, how strong you'll be at 80, and whether or not your final decade will be active or in decline.
That's right, Taylor. So everyone take a pen and or your phone and write some notes, because we're going to list out a lot of things, but really get into most things that you can log on a daily basis or keep track of on a daily basis. So these are things that will actually move the needle, like Taylor said, in performance, metabolic health, and just longevity in general, just making you feel better.
And you know, we love these CGMs. So let's start with one that is centered around the CGM.
Yeah. So the first one, real quick, because a lot of people are using a continuous glucose monitor, the CGM, the little disc in the back of the arm, the sensor to measure, blood sugar. And we do that a lot with our clients. Our dietitians can talk to our clients about that. And so one thing to think about, there's lots to look at in that data, but one thing to think about when you are using a 2-week sensor is aiming for an average glucose level around 100 milligrams per deciliter. So this is for healthy, non-diabetic people, right? And these sensors, they have a lot of alerts to say, this is for healthy, non-insulin, non-diabetics. So this is just for your average person. But the goal is to get closer over time to around 100 milligrams for your average glucose level. And this just is because we want a fasting glucose level of under 100. So when you go to the doctor, you get your blood drawn, under 100 is what you're aiming for. But that's just one moment in time. So our average should be closer to that, because we really want to be towards that fasting range most of the time if we're only eating, quote unquote, 3 meals a day or 4 meals a day or 5 meals a day. But we should be letting it come down closer to that fasting level between meals, and then have a longer time overnight and between that dinner and that breakfast.
And that average is really going to be affected by really your time under the curve. So like as your glucose goes up, we do want that to come right back down when insulin starts reacting to that increase in blood glucose. So if you're someone who is less insulin sensitive, you're going to have much more time under that curve. So, your blood sugar might go up and it might stay up for a longer period of time, and that's going to really affect your average. So as we're, employing these healthier habits, we're starting to look at the data and understand what's happening. We can aim to get that average down, over the course of your 2-week trial. So, and that leads us to waist to hip ratio.
Yes. And this is important. It is a ratio, found by dividing the circumference of the waist by the circumference of the hips. If you have a body composition scan, if you get a DEXA scan or something like that, we have Fit3D where we do scans for clients. You can see what that number is. And it's considered to be a more accurate measure of lifestyle related diseases than BMI because it shows people where they carry excess weight. We know that in our previous episode, we talked about the apple shape versus the pear shape. We know the pear shape is healthier long-term for longevity. And so that tends to be where women might carry more weight, hips, butt, thighs, things like that. But still, if you have that visceral fat, no matter if you have the pear or the apple, that visceral fat right around that waist, that can lead to more risk of insulin resistance and more inflammation, more diseases down the road. The apple shape is where people carry mostly right in their stomach, like a little higher up, not so much in the hips, the butt, the thighs. But so this number kind of shows how much visceral fat you have in that stomach area. And it could be that, we've seen before that a lot of, you're touching your
well, I just
your
like,
waist.
as you get me thinking about it, I'm like, okay, basically you could take a tape measure, right? Like straight around your belly button.
You
and
can.
then you measure like the top of your, where your pelvis is.
Yeah. So you could measure both at home if you don't have an official scan or anything. But the optimal ranges for men is 0.95 or less. For women, it's 0.8 or less. And that's because you don't want your higher up around your waist to be the same as your hips. Like you don't want it to be 1-to-1 because and honestly, I'm kind of like a little rectangle, kind of like that because I don't have any hips.
You got curves.
But you don't really want it to be like a rectangle optimally. Now, this really comes into play when you have a lot of excess fat, visceral fat. So those are the numbers to look out for. And then it is a better predictor of longevity, lower visceral fat, and therefore less risk of chronic disease.
Right. And it's big with that, insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance. That visceral fat is just so highly metabolically charged, right? So we have, if you're developing a lot of that visceral fat, we know that is going to lead to more insulin resistance.
Yeah. And by the way, with this, we were talking about waist to hip ratio, but waist circumference has to do with that. And so just the circumference of the waist in inches, we know that for men, we want that less than 40 inches. And for women, we want that less than 35, or less than 30 inches would be, even better. But for men, less than 40, for women, less than 35 would be to decrease risk.
And so that is a great, just like body composition metric, but we also want to look at some strength metrics. And so one of the ones that's just a nice, simple one, a lot of places can measure this pretty easily, is grip strength. And so this actually correlates to all-cause mortality, and it has functional independence, which means that just this variable alone has a strong correlation to your longevity. And so there's a saying, your handshake predicts your health span. And so you want to have a strong grip because that is not only a signal of, how strong the muscles in your forearm are, but you can also think about the connection and the health of your neurological system because, and I've talked about this before, but when you squeeze your hand, if you squeeze it kind of lightly, you'll feel that the muscles in your forearm start to contract. But as you squeeze your hand even firmer, you'll start to feel some bicep and tricep. And then you'll feel further up. You just keep squeezing harder and harder. You'll begin to feel your shoulder muscles and even into your pec. So that's all a signal of having really good neurological recruitment of the muscles in that kinetic chain. And that's all representative of your grip strength. And so when you're squeezing something, when you're squeezing that dynamometer really hard and trying to get a good measure, you're recruiting muscles all the way up the chain. And what we find is that, especially with our new weightlifters or people that are kind of newer to doing things like hex bar deadlifts and pull-ups, one of the things that often will fail before their leg muscles is the grip. So they'll, if you're doing like a hex bar deadlift and you're trying to pick something up off the ground that's really heavy, it might challenge your grip before it challenges other parts of your system.
Oh, that's so true.
So, we like to build that up with things like farmer carries, obviously hex bar deadlifting, doing lots of pull-ups and things that just require you to work on that grip. And it is something that I would say might lag behind some of the other muscle developments that you get when you start strength training, but it's one of those things you just want to kind of stick with it, which is kind of why it has that strong correlation to longevity, because you can't just like build it up in like a month or so.
I was going to say, I can really tell when I'm losing my grip strength. Like if I haven't done those certain exercises for a few months with my strength training, or just haven't been as disciplined with strength training, I can tell, like I get back to the farmer carries or assisted pull-ups or whatever. I'm like, oh God, my grip is terrible.
Yeah.
But I'm laughing about the handshake because I can't stand a limp handshake.
Yeah.
So we really need to develop that strong handshake.
Yeah. And you know what? We had, we coached, I just got done coaching my son's I-9 basketball league. And one of my clients gave me the idea. He said, this coach that I always loved, one of the first things he did was teach the kids how to handshake. And it's like, look me in the eye and do a handshake. And I did that at the first practice, and those kids loved it. They came back the next time and they just all reached out their hand, like looked me in the eye and like shook my hand, and we had that eye contact. And I was like, we need more of this,
Yeah.
So
I remember wondering remember we talked about during COVID, we're like, is that going to go away? Like for the longest time, people weren't shaking hands. They were doing fist bumps or elbow bumps or whatever. And we're like, are we going to get back to like handshakes?
Yeah.
And we have, but that limp handshake with the wrist,
the dead fish,
I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, no, you got to go, thumb crease to thumb crease.
To me, that sounds like that looks like you don't really want to touch anyone.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, we don't have to handshake.
You're not giving me the ring to kiss.
Yeah, come on now.
So after, we're thinking about grip strength, then the next one we would want to do is your overall muscle mass index. And so this one, again, requires a little bit of extra work because you have to get your lean muscle mass. So a lot of people will do that with a DEXA scan. We use our Fit3D scanner to do the same thing. But when you have your lean muscle mass, you can take that, convert it from pounds to kilograms, and then you're going to take your height and in meters and square your height. And so then it's kilograms divided by meters squared. And so for men, your muscle mass index is just such a better predictor than your BMI, because your BMI is that total body mass might show that you're overweight when really you're just muscular.
Yeah, just think about all the athletes and what their BMIs might be.
And so a great goal for men is to be over 17, and a goal for women is to be over 15. So
you might get your calculator out for this, but yeah, so it's for men over 17 kilograms divided by meter squared. For women, the goal would be over 15 kilograms divided by meter squared. So your kilograms in weight divided by meter squared.
Right. And again,
what's the meter squared again?
So the meter squared is your height. So
your height.
For instance,
and the kilograms is your lean muscle, not your weight.
So for instance, you had 103 pounds of lean muscle. We converted that to kilograms. That was 45. You're 5'6". We converted that to meters. So that's 1.68. We square that. That's 2.8. Then we divide 45 by 2.8, and that gives you 16.07, which is again greater than 15, which is what we're looking for. And we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but why do we want to have more muscle? It's not just so that we can look good at the pool or at the beach. We want to have more muscle so that it's more metabolically active. So it's burning more calories. It's helping with insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance, because when you're using your muscles, and just when you have more muscles, the muscles will preferentially store your extra glucose as glycogen. So the muscles will go and sort of eat up that extra glucose in your body, which keeps that resting that blood glucose low over time. So even as you're spiking up, you may not even have as much insulin working on that system because your muscles are going through and sort of preferentially taking up that glucose.
Yeah. And it just helps protect you later on, having more muscle. As you get older, it might be harder to build that muscle And that's why protein and strength training are even more important. So it is protective for like against falls and, balance and all that as well.
And there's that general sort of concept that, over a certain age, you're expected that so your overall top end strength is going to go down by about 1% every year. So in your midlife, it is that much more important for you to build that up as high as possible. So that decline can be very, very gradual. And also you're going to be building the habits of strength training to get to that point. So you're much more likely to, sort of keep that going as you age.
Yeah. While we're on fitness, let's talk about resting heart rate.
Yeah. Resting heart rate's a great one. I love thinking about resting heart rate, one, because it's easy. A lot of people will wear an Apple Watch, and if you don't know, it's tracking your resting heart rate. If you have that setting turned on, it's tracking it all the time. So you can kind of, the way I like to think about resting heart rate, it's great to have like a measure, just like a measure in time, just to kind of see where your resting heart rate's at. And we're going to give you some numbers that look at that. But it's also really important to look at the trend line for your resting heart rate. And that can be affected on a day-to-day basis by things like sleep and hydration and how hard you worked out the day before and overall stress level, things like that. But that overall trend line, looking at it over the course of weeks, months, years, is going to be a great representation of your overall fitness level and your overall, how strong your cardiovascular system is. So for resting heart rate, we do want it to be below 60. So the goal is, between 50 and 65 beats per minute. And actually every 10 beats per minute increase above 60, again, that's your resting heart rate, equals a 10 to 20% increase in mortality. So if you're at 70 beats per minute, then you have a 10 to 20% higher risk of mortality than someone who is at 60 beats per minute.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That they've researched that and they can measure that.
And it's not just looking at, cardiac related illness. It's all cause death. So, your heart and cardiovascular system plays a really important role in all of these sort of chronic disease processes.
So you mentioned sleep there. Obviously that can impact a lot of different factors. So this is a very basic one we've probably all heard, but sleep quality and duration is critical for so many things: immune function, metabolic health, cognitive longevity, food choices, and therefore in our metabolic processes and, so many different things. So 7 to 8 hours is a great goal, no less than that. I mean, you definitely want 7 to 8 hours at least. 8 hours would be ideal.
And that, a lot of people, there's a lot of people out there who just have like poor sleep. One, they have poor sleep hygiene, but also people who have pretty decent sleep hygiene, but just have trouble sleeping. So I would say, aim to be in bed at least that amount of time, even if you're not sleeping, even if you're just resting with your eyes closed. And for whatever reason, maybe you're like me and your mind is like completely racing with all the things that you have to do the next day. But as long as you're in bed, you're not like looking at a phone or anything for that 7 to 8 hours, you're still going to be getting a lot of the big benefits from sleep, even if you're not actually asleep. But we know bad sleep equals more fat storage and lower muscle gain. So with a lot of these habits, we're trying to stack these benefits. And so you're doing everything. You're doing the nutrition. You're doing all of the weightlifting that you need to do. But now you're getting bad sleep. So you're storing more fat and you're not getting that same muscle rebuilding that you would need.
Right.
So it really is important to try to do that. And less than 6 hours of sleep has a 12% higher mortality risk when they've studied this. So, there's a lot of things like we're just trying to add, percentage points in the right direction.
That's right.
Let me tell you about one hack that has been helping me a ton. I know that you've been doing it too. Y'all, the eye mask. Our room,
Getting our beauty sleep.
Our room is dark, but just wearing that eye mask, I don't know if it's something about the pressure, but I have such deeper sleep wearing the eye mask, not to mention the dreams are crazy vivid whenever I wear the eye mask.
I think his light still gets in from, the bathroom door cracked and then our other door cracked and our dog like constantly opening the door up and there's, the windows from the other room, that light's coming in.
And
so I think it just really, I think that just really helps. And then keeping it cold.
Yeah.
We know that keeping a cooler house or a cooler bedroom definitely helps with sleep. So 67, 68 degrees, no higher than that.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if there's a ton of research on that, but I know that's a sweet spot.
Yeah,
68 degrees.
Yeah, definitely colder for better sleep. Absolutely. You and I, when we're in a place where it's like, 73 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
It's like I
cannot.
Yeah. It's like, don't touch me.
Don't touch me. So that is a great one. And not to mention the behaviors that it's also been researched a lot, how your behavior changes with less sleep the next day. So if you're tired, you have more brain fog, you have less mental focus, you're just not feeling your best. Obviously, you may not want to exercise as hard, or you may not exercise at all. You're going to have more carb cravings. That is researched. There's a ton of research backing that. You are going to have more cravings for maybe not just sweets, but more carby things, whether it's salty, savory, crunchy. And you just don't have as much,
that willpower, right? It's like, that's what a lot of that's just connected to is, every day when we, go to sleep and wake up, we have that like fresh tank of willpower and it just gets chipped away all day by the decisions we make and having to say no to things that we really want and being disciplined. And if you're starting with that tank half full, then you're not setting yourself up for a win.
So to end this discussion, I wanted to talk about some nutrition quick hitters. So some things, lots of little things that a lot have been backed by research, but there is a range out there. And obviously some of it depends on the person and your goals and your health history and all of that. But some things that I believe are super helpful as a registered dietitian. And so I'm just gonna bang them out at the end. So number 1, limit eating out to 1 time a week, just once. I think that's a great goal.
But there's so many options out there for people to have. They can have different food every day.
But choose what you would love the best. So like, is it a dinner on the weekend, or is it a brunch, or is it, whatever. So limit one meal eating out to 1 time a week. That would be helpful.
But what if I choose healthy options when I'm out? It's hard to know, right? Like it might seem healthy, but it's got so much added salt. And you just don't know what people
and added sugar, and the portions are usually bigger, and so it's always best to cook at home. But this is just my recommendation: 1 time a week. Maybe you limit it to 1 time a week. If you want a number, that would be my number overall. Obviously, there's different events and social things that come up. Number 2, protein. That's a buzzword. Protein. It's everywhere. You see ranges everywhere, and there is a range. It depends on what type of athlete you are: recreational, power lifter, you're a runner, you're not, maybe you're not working out at the gym that much, but you're getting older and we don't want to risk sarcopenia and, all this stuff. But in general, I would say a really good range for protein would be 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram as a daily target. That's just for building muscle along with resistance training. So obviously we need both. Resistance training is really important. And you want that from both plant and animal sources. It is, if you're a vegetarian, it's a little bit harder to get as much quality complete protein, but a good mix is great. But there are ways, there are complete proteins, soy, quinoa, those are complete proteins with all the amino acids that you need. So 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram is a good target.
Is there a pounds for that? Isn't it like 0.8 to 1?
Yeah. So, you've heard and I think the big trendy thing is, which is not always necessary, is 1
to 1.
1 gram per pound. That's maybe on the higher end of things. It is there's always a range though. For instance, if there is someone who weighs a lot and they have a lot of lot of muscle, but they also need a lot of calories for their sport. If you're doing if you're doing this range, they might have to eat, that might put them at 350 grams of protein or something if they need a certain amount of calories for their sport or to train. And that may not be reasonable for someone like that.
Yeah.
So it really depends. But in general, I think that's a really good starting range for people who are trying to look to build muscle or maintain their muscle mass as they get older.
I will say when I'm on my protein game and I'm close, even if I'm not hitting it exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm close to that like 1-to-1. I feel great.
Yeah. And if you can do it, I think, the higher ends can be helpful. This range is for targeting muscle growth. It's not like for some people, it may not be necessary to go as high as that, but for a lot of people, it is helpful. It also pushes out room for other stuff and the appetite for other stuff. And that's a big thing of it. Like when you're having more produce, when you're having more protein, I always talk about protein and produce at every meal and making that the bulk, the big bulk of your diet along with healthy fats. And using produce as your carb source whenever possible. But you do feel better and you're not going to have as much appetite. Protein is filling and, it takes longer to digest. And it takes some calories to digest and burn some calories in your body to digest and things like that. So you're kind of just pushing out more of the carby processed foods as well. Another quick one is, this is not a daily hydration goal, but 8 ounces of water first thing in the morning. I find this is really helpful for a lot of people before you start drinking coffee or energy drinks or just not drink at all. If you're not a coffee drinker, it really sets your day up for feeling better, helps with brain fog. It helps with, acid reflux. Some people start drinking coffee on an empty stomach and they don't feel very good from the acidity. So 8 ounces of water first thing is a great habit when you wake up. You could do it while you're making coffee. You could do it right when you get out of bed, whatever. But 8 ounces first thing in the morning. 16 would be a bonus.
Water, eh?
Yeah. Water. Yeah. It's a fun one.
I need to drink more water.
Yes.
Always. Yeah.
Yes.
You're always on me about that.
Yes, you do. You chug
I wake
it
up
at
I wake
night.
up in the middle of the night sometimes and I'm just like, I'm parched. You gotta wake up and go chug water. It's like, that's probably a sign I should be drinking it more during the day.
Well, I know. And you're funny because you wait to drink. You don't drink with meals ever. And you have your cup of water sitting there, but then you'll chug 3 glasses right before bed. And it's like, well, aren't you going to have to get up and pee?
Yeah.
So you want to start early in the day so your sleep is not affected. And that does happen to a lot of people. All right. Last couple of things, little numbers to remember to improve your wellness. Take 20 to 30 minutes to eat a meal. Now, I know this is not always realistic, but at least at dinner or at least at one meal a day, if you can take 20 to 30 minutes to eat a meal, it does help with blood sugar control. It helps with portion control. It helps with actually digesting your food well and helping you remember that you ate and you don't want something right away after. Because if we scarf down our meal, that's often gets people into trouble with overeating, getting seconds, or they're like, oh, an hour later, oh, I kind of want a dessert. So taking 20 to 30 minutes to eat a meal. And that number is there because it takes about that long for our brain to recognize that our stomach is getting full. So that alert to our brain doesn't always happen.
That's like
20 to 30 minutes.
That's like the burrito effect. You're holding a burrito. You don't want to sit there and hold the burrito for 30 minutes. So you might eat that burrito in 5 minutes. And then you're like, oh, now I'll eat some chips when really you just had 1,200 calories. Yeah. And you're just going to lump some other food on top.
And that's sometimes why liquid calories too. I know protein shakes have, there's a place for those. There's a place for smoothies if you have the right combination of things in there. However, liquid calories can get some people into trouble, even if it's a healthy thing, because they don't realize that they ate, that was food. It's it's going down so quickly. It's already broken down for you. Your body doesn't have to do quite as much. So anyways, and then the last 2 things is at least 1 poop a day. There may be something going on if you're not pooping every day. Think about all the incoming food, the input, there needs to be some output. And so that's something to think about. Speak with the dietitian about maybe you're not getting enough fiber. Maybe there's some other health history of GI disorders, dehydration, things like that. But at least 1 poop a day, maybe 3, and that's okay too. And then lastly, it's always kind of a boring topic, but 4 to 5 cups of produce a day. Now that's veggies and fruit. this is just my recommendation to aim for. This is hard, y'all.
It is hard.
But the 2020 to 2025 Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommends 2 to 3 cup equivalents of vegetable a day and 1.5 to 2 cup equivalents of fruit. And that means sometimes it's dried. It depends on the amount of cups. If it's like fresh, dried juice, they count, which I don't like that. But so this is kind of combining those into produce. Maybe you're not a big, fruit person, or you don't want to have as much during the day. Maybe you load up more on vegetables, but 4 to 5 cups, you can get like 2 cups at dinner,
right.
Like you could get half of that at one meal. So the other times of day, just trying to add it in through snacks or add it into your breakfast. I love when we can actually, sneak produce into people's breakfasts and lunches, raw veggies at lunch, a salad. Leftovers from dinner is a great way to get more veggies in at lunch if you just heat it up and it's already a balanced meal. But you can do it. It's just something to think about. Maybe you have fruit for a snack. So 4 to 5 cups of produce daily would be a great goal.
And one of the things I think about when I'm thinking about produce, it's not just because vegetables are good for you, but I'm always thinking about the fiber. Right? I mean, I feel like that's really one of the biggest things with eating lots of produce is that you're just like really bumping up that fiber, which just makes all the other things, your blood sugars.
And hydration.
Yeah,
I mean, you're getting a lot of hydration and you're pushing out, again, just like protein, you're pushing out room for other stuff. It's a lot of roughage. It's a lot of volume. So those that are volume eaters, they like eating a lot. Add in a lot more produce. You're going to feel better too.
I find myself doing things crazy that I feel like I just would have thought were crazy up until recently. But, like in my lunch, I'm just taking like a mini cucumber and I'm just eating it like a pickle, or taking
you have a whole bell pepper in your lunch
whole bell pepper and just kind of ripping it apart. Like you don't need to overcomplicate it. You don't need to do a bunch of extra prep, like slice the cucumber or the bell pepper. You can pretty much just eat it like an apple. You just make it easy.
If you're in a hurry, yes.
You might be getting those seeds everywhere.
Together.
I do have seeds all over my office floor. But,
well, you can, so you can do simple things, throw it in a lunchbox, raw fruits, raw veggies, nothing fancy. But well, I hope you wrote some of these things down. Maybe you work on one of these things at a time, or maybe this was just, affirmation like, oh, great. I'm
hitting that.
I'm hitting this. Great. And you just, check mark it down. But if this was helpful, or you feel like someone else would benefit from these numbers to think about in your life, do us a favor and share this episode via text so that they can listen to it as well.
All right. Well, we'll catch you later.
Thanks for listening.